The story of James Toney is one of the most fascinating and heartbreaking journeys in boxing history, a tale that begins with raw talent and dominance, but slowly drifts into missed discipline, fading greatness, and the cruel passage of time. From the moment Toney stepped into the ring as a professional in 1988, it was clear that he wasn't just another fighter trying to survive in a brutal sport. He was something rare, a natural genius with instincts that couldn't be taught. He didn't rely on flashy footwork or overwhelming speed. Instead, he mastered the art of defense, slipping punches by inches, rolling shots off his shoulders, and countering with precision that made elite opponents look ordinary. His style was heavily inspired by legends like James "Lights Out" Toney's idol Roberto Duran, and it showed in every movement, every subtle shift of his upper body, every perfectly timed counterpunch that landed like a statement. Early in his career, Toney built an undefeated record, climbing through the ranks with confidence and swagger, and by 1991, he had captured the IBF middleweight title by defeating Michael Nunn in a dramatic upset that shocked the boxing world. That fight alone told you everything about Toney's mentality. He was losing on the scorecards, outboxed for most of the night, but he never panicked, never rushed, and in the 11th round, he found the opening and ended it with a brutal knockout, announcing himself as a force to be reckoned with. As his career progressed, Toney continued to prove his greatness, moving up in weight classes and taking on bigger challenges without hesitation, something very few fighters are willing to do. He dominated fighters like Iran Barkley and outclassed Mike McCallum in a series of highly technical battles that showcased his defensive brilliance and ring IQ. When Toney was at his peak, he was nearly impossible to hit cleanly, and even when opponents thought they had him cornered, he would slip out of danger and fire back with combinations that seemed effortless. It wasn't just skill, it was artistry, the kind of boxing that purists admire and casual fans struggle to fully appreciate. By the mid-1990s, he had moved up to super middleweight and faced Roy Jones Jr. in what was supposed to be a clash of two elite fighters in their prime. But that night in 1994 turned out to be a turning point, not just in Toney's career but in his entire life. Against Roy Jones Jr., Toney looked unusually slow and out of shape, reportedly struggling with weight issues leading up to the fight. Jones dominated him from start to finish, using speed and athleticism that Toney simply couldn't match that night, and for the first time in his career, Toney looked human, vulnerable, and completely outclassed. It was a humbling loss, one that exposed the cracks that had already begun to form behind the scenes. Unlike many fighters who bounce back stronger after a defeat, Toney's issues weren't just about boxing. They were about discipline, lifestyle, and consistency. He had always been known for his love of food and his struggles to make weight, but after the loss to Jones, those habits became more pronounced. Training camps became less structured, weight cuts became more extreme, and his dedication to conditioning started to fade. Despite these issues, Toney's natural talent kept him competitive for years, and he continued to move up in weight, eventually fighting as a heavyweight, something almost unheard of for a man who started his career as a middleweight. He defeated notable fighters like Evander Holyfield, although that win was later overturned due to a failed drug test, adding another layer of controversy to his career. Still, even in the heavyweight division, Toney showed flashes of brilliance, going toe-to-toe with much larger opponents and relying on his defensive skills to neutralize their power. His fights against Vitaly Klitschko were rumored but never materialized, but he did face Samuel Peter in two grueling battles that proved he still had the heart of a warrior, even as his physical condition declined. But as the years went on, the toll of boxing and years of inconsistent discipline began to catch up with him. Toney's weight ballooned, his reflexes slowed, and the same defensive brilliance that once made him untouchable started to fade. He kept fighting, long after his prime had passed, taking bouts that many felt he didn't need, driven perhaps by a love for the sport, financial reasons, or simply the inability to walk away from the only life he had ever known. Watching Toney in his later years was difficult for fans who remembered his greatness. It was like seeing a masterpiece slowly lose its color, the sharpness replaced by a shadow of what once was. One of the most heartbreaking aspects of Toney's story is that his decline wasn't due to a lack of talent or opportunity. It was largely self-inflicted. He had all the tools to be remembered as one of the greatest fighters of all time, and in many ways he still is, especially among hardcore boxing fans who understand the depth of his skill. But there's always that lingering question of what could have been if he had maintained the discipline, if he had taken his conditioning as seriously as his craft, if he had managed his career with more structure and focus. These what-ifs are what make his story so sad, because they remind us that greatness alone isn't enough. It has to be supported by consistency and sacrifice. Outside the ring, Toney's life has also been marked by challenges, including health issues that are common among fighters who have spent decades absorbing punishment. Reports of slurred speech and signs of neurological damage have raised concerns among fans and analysts, serving as a stark reminder of the long-term risks associated with boxing. It's the kind of reality that often gets overshadowed by the excitement of the sport, but in Toney's case, it's impossible to ignore. He gave so much of himself to boxing, and in return, the sport took a piece of him that can never be fully restored. Yet, even with all the struggles and setbacks, there's something deeply admirable about James Toney's journey. He never took the easy path, never avoided tough opponents, and never backed down from a challenge, regardless of the odds. He fought across multiple weight divisions, faced some of the best fighters of his era, and left behind a legacy that is as complex as it is impressive. For those who truly understand boxing, Toney isn't just remembered for his losses or his decline, he's remembered for the moments of brilliance, the nights when he made elite fighters look ordinary, the times when his defense was so perfect it seemed almost unreal. In the end, the story of James Toney is a powerful lesson about talent, discipline, and the unforgiving nature of time. It shows that even the most gifted individuals are not immune to the consequences of their choices, and that greatness, while extraordinary, is also fragile. Toney's career is a reminder that success in any field requires more than just natural ability. It demands consistency, focus, and a willingness to make sacrifices that aren't always easy. Without those elements, even the brightest stars can fade, leaving behind a legacy filled with both admiration and regret. And maybe that's why his story resonates so deeply with fans, because it feels real, human, and painfully relatable. Not everyone gets to see what they could have been at their absolute best, but with James Toney, we did. And that's what makes his decline so difficult to watch. He showed us greatness, and then slowly we watched it slip away.